Welcome and thank you for attending the ANA Security Group Heat Stress Safety Training. At the completion of this training, you will be able to understand how hot conditions affect your body, recognize symptoms of heat illness, understand the ANA Security Group heat stress procedures, take precautions to reduce the risk of heat illness. ANA Security Group is committed to protecting employees from the hazards of hot conditions and to preventing heat-related illnesses at the workplace. We will identify, evaluate, and control potential exposure of our employees to extreme temperature, humidity, and other factors that may contribute to heat stress. Heat rash is prickly heat that manifests as red papules, i.e., small, inflammatory, irritated spots on the skin, and usually appears in areas where clothing is restrictive. As sweating increases, these papules give rise to a prickling sensation. Prickly heat occurs on skin that is persistently wet from unevaporated sweat, and heat rash papules may become infected if they are not treated. Treatment and prevention. In most cases, heat rashes will disappear when the affected individual returns to a cool environment. Heat syncope is a condition in which the brain does not receive enough oxygen because blood pools in the extremities, resulting in a loss of consciousness. This reaction is similar to that of heat exhaustion and does not affect the body's heat balance. However, the onset of heat syncope is rapid and unpredictable. Heat syncope is a fainting episode or dizziness that usually occurs with prolonged standing or when suddenly rising from a sitting or lying position. Factors that may contribute to heat syncope include dehydration and a lack of acclimatization. Treatment and prevention. Prevent by moving around a little rather than standing still all the time. Heat cramps usually occur when performing hard physical labor in a hot environment. These cramps have been attributed to an electrolyte imbalance caused by sweating. Cramps can be caused by both too much and too little salt. Cramps appear to be caused by the lack of water replenishment. Because sweat is a hypotonic solution, plus or minus 0.3% sodium chloride, excess salt can build up in the body if the water lost through sweating is not replaced. Treatment and prevention. Thirst can't be relied on as a guide to the need for water. Instead, water must be consumed every 15 to 20 minutes in hot environments. Heat exhaustion is a condition with symptoms that include headache, nausea, vertigo, weakness, thirst, and giddiness. Fainting associated with heat exhaustion can be dangerous because the victim may be operating machinery or controlling an operation that should not be left unattended. Moreover, the victim may be injured if they faint. Also, the signs and symptoms seen in heat exhaustion are similar to those of heat stroke, which is a medical emergency. Prevention and treatment. Rest in cool place. Drink electrolyte solution. Heat stroke occurs when the body's temperature regulation system fails and body temperature rises to critical levels. Heat stroke is a medical emergency. Signs and symptoms. The primary signs and symptoms of heat stroke are confusion, irrational behavior, loss of consciousness, convulsions, a lack of sweating, usually hot and dry skin, and an extremely high body temperature. Prevention and treatment. Call 911 immediately. Keep victim cool and provide cool water if conscious. The plan administrator is responsible for implementing the heat illness prevention plan, monitoring work area heat conditions and worker physiological parameters, and ensuring employees are trained to recognize the signs and symptoms of heat stress and what to do if these occur. Supervisors are responsible for monitoring weather conditions at the job site and adjusting work schedules as necessary, encouraging employees to frequently consume water and take periodic rest breaks when working in hot conditions, monitoring employees for signs of heat stress, providing appropriate first aid, and contacting emergency services when necessary. All employees are responsible for monitoring their own personal risk factors for heat-related illness and taking appropriate steps to prevent heat stress, including frequent consumption of water and other acceptable fluids and periodic rest breaks. In addition, employees may be paired with a buddy to monitor for signs and symptoms of heat stress. To ensure employees safely acclimatize to working in hot conditions, supervisors will observe employees who are newly assigned to working in the heat for the first 14 days. Employees will have access to fresh, cool, potable drinking water at all times while working. Water will be located as close as possible to the work area. Where drinking water is not plumbed, it will be provided to each employee at the beginning of each work shift in a sufficient quantity to provide 1 quart per hour to each employee for the entire shift. If an entire shift's water supply is not provided at the beginning of the shift, employees will begin their shift with smaller quantities of water, which will be replenished as needed to ensure employees are getting at least 1 quart of water per hour. Employees are encouraged to drink water frequently during their shifts. Supervisors will remind employees to drink water every hour during their shifts and ensure water supplies are restocked and accessible. Employees are allowed and encouraged to take preventive cool-down rest breaks in the shade whenever they feel the need to do so to protect themselves from overheating. Shaded rest areas will be provided and accessible to employees at all times while working. When the outdoor temperature where employees are working is over 80 degrees Fahrenheit, at least one shaded area will be available, which will be either open to the air or otherwise provided with ventilation or cooling. Even when the outdoor temperature is not above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, shade will be provided either in the manner described above or upon an employee's request. The amount of shade present at a worksite will be at least enough to accommodate the number of employees on a recovery, rest, or meal period at a given time so that employees can comfortably sit fully in the shade without having to be in physical contact with one another. The shaded rest area will be as close as practicable to the work area. Supervisors will encourage employees to take preventive cool-down rest breaks in the shade, specify frequency, and will ensure adequate shade is accessible to all employees taking a break or meal period at a given time. While employees are on a rest break, supervisors will do the following. Monitor employees for signs or symptoms of heat illness. Ask employees if they are experiencing symptoms of heat illness. Encourage employees to remain in the shade as long as needed. Supervisors will not order employees back to work until signs or symptoms of heat illness have gone away, if present, and supervisors will allow employees to spend at least 5 minutes, in addition to the time it takes employees to get to the shaded rest area, on each rest break. If an employee shows signs or reports symptoms of heat illness while taking a preventive cool-down rest, the supervisor on duty must provide appropriate first aid or emergency response. When the temperature at the worksite reaches or exceeds 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the following additional procedures will be implemented. Communication will be maintained by specify communication method, e.g., voice, observation, or electronic means, so employees can contact a supervisor when necessary. An electronic device, e.g., cell phone, may only be used for this purpose if reception in the area of the worksite is reliable. Employees will be observed for alertness and signs and symptoms of heat illness using one or more of the following methods. Supervisor observation of 20 or fewer employees. Mandatory buddy system. Regular communication with a sole employee, such as by radio or cell phone, or other effective means of communication. One or more employees will be designated at each worksite as authorized to call for emergency medical services. Other employees will be allowed to call for emergency services when no designated employee is available. Supervisors will remind employees to drink plenty of water throughout the work shift. Supervisors will hold pre-shift meetings with employees before the start of work to review high heat procedures, encourage employees to drink plenty of water, and remind employees of their right to take a cool-down rest break when needed. One or more employees will be designated at each worksite as authorized to call for emergency medical services. Other employees will be allowed to call for emergency services when no designated employee is available. Supervisors will remind employees to drink plenty of water throughout the work shift. Supervisors will hold pre-shift meetings with employees before the start of work to review high heat procedures, encourage employees to drink plenty of water, and remind employees of their right to take a cool-down rest break when needed. The following procedures will be followed in order to ensure employee acclimatization to hot conditions. Supervisors will closely observe all employees during a heat wave. For purposes of acclimatization procedures, the term heat wave means any day in which the predicted high temperature for the day is at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit and at least 10 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the average high daily temperature of the preceding 5 days. Any employee newly assigned to a high heat area will be closely observed by a supervisor for the first 14 days of the employee's employment. Be prepared. If someone exhibits symptoms of a heat illness, contact your supervisor and safety. Use Mayday procedure. Be prepared to describe the symptoms. Give specific and clear directions to your work area. Start providing first aid. Move the person into the shade. Provide sips of cool water, as long as conscious and not vomiting. Loosen their clothing. Cool them. Fan them, put ice in groin and underarms, or soak clothing with cool water. Key points to remember. Working in hot conditions can affect your health and safety. Understand the risks and the precautions. Know symptoms of heat-related illness and first aid response. Use all available measures to reduce heat stress and keep safe and healthy when working in hot conditions.